Hello and welcome to the Animation Industry Podcast. My name is Terry, and last week I mentioned I was uploading all 192 episodes to a new YouTube channel called Animation Industry Podcast instead of being under my personal channel called Terrymation. And so far, I have 8 subscribers. So if you're one of them, thank you. This chat is with Merve Çaydere, who is a Turkish animation director, designer, and model maker specializing in stop-motion animation. She is currently a set designer at Laika Studios, and she recently worked on Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio as well. Now, in our chat, she shares her journey from Turkey to the US in pursuit of stop-motion set building and all the ups and downs that happened in between. So without further ado, let's jump in. Hi, Merve. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm happy to be talking to you for the second time now, except this time you won't be translating from Turkish to English. You'll be speaking in English, talking about yourself. This is great. So, okay, why don't we just start off with this? Just jump right into it. You're a set designer working at Laika right now, which I think is amazing. Can you explain what a set designer does?
Yeah, so set designer is basically an architect. Like it can be compared to an architect. I basically draft the sets that are gonna be built, and I deliver those like blueprints to the set shop, and they, base their builds on those drafts. I also make like white models
Sorry, white models?
Yeah, like white, like what we call them are maquettes. So they're just basically made of like foam core and materials like that. So they're kind of almost like a sketch of the actual set. Sometimes it's smaller than the actual set. Most of the times it's smaller, just to see kind of how the design looks like in the physical form. And we also use them for camera scouts. Meaning like the camera and lighting setup the way that they would for a shot, or like kind of maybe in a simpler way, and then we see if the set works in those cases. And I also make like 3D models of the sets. Sometimes those models go to VFX or previews, or they can use those based off like their.
So, oh my goodness, I have so many questions suddenly. But I'm wondering, can you just explain the pipeline a little bit more of where you come in and like how sets progress after? I'm assuming, like in my idea, you get storyboards and then you have to think, okay, how many backgrounds do I need? What props do I need, etc. So maybe you can just go through the process of at what point you come in.
Yeah, that's a good question. So basically, set designer is a part of the product, the art department, and the head of the art department is the production designer. And they usually have a vision for the set, and set designers usually work with, like you said, storyboards, also concept art we receive. And then we also look for visual references. There is some art direction, like we usually get some visual references from the art direction too. And our job is just basically kind of look at those facts. And like you said, like when we're watching the animatic, we see like how the camera is, I guess, positioned and which parts of the sets that we are seeing. So some of the things I need to consider is like camera access, animator access, that kind of stuff, because set needs to be able to break apart in ways that animators and other people can access to the puppets and animate them. Yeah, and
Yes.
then
So, okay, so
they're
you
built.
watch the animatic and you see the storyboards and you have the concept art and you have the idea from the production designer. Then you go into like, do you go into AutoCAD or like Maya or 3D Studio Max or something and draft something up?
We use a software called Vectorworks.
Okay.
That's also used in film industry. It's kind of like a standard now. And my process is usually I start with a white model directly, because it gives me like I'm able to like almost sculpt, like I can see like in my hands, like how proportions look like and things like that.
So before
And
you
then
even touch a computer, you just get out a bunch of foam.
that's what I do, but that's not the standard process. People usually start with drafting, but to
Yeah.
me, it gives a better visual sense. So, and then with that, like almost it's like a first impression, like first, like I don't know. And then
Yeah.
when I get to a point where I can kind of I have an idea, then I start drafting, and then I actually directly we make this is the process for everybody. I guess we make the 3D model first, and then software gives you an option to like just kind of get the elevations and ground planes and all that from that 3D model.
Wow. How much measuring is involved? Like if you go to a stage and you're like, okay, this stage has 15 feet by 15 feet. Now I have to design within these boundaries.
Yeah, we get that information at the beginning. There's usually a stage that's allocated for that set.
Yeah.
So we have those boundaries, but there are standard animation deck sizes. So they're usually 2x2, 4x4, 4x8, and just kind of those also determine the overall size. I mean, we use those to determine that size.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're designing in your software. How much are you thinking about like details, like color and like when you look at the concept art and like, you know, there's a crack on the window and I don't know, this chair has buttons on it. Like, are you designing all of that in the software too, or are you designing the basic geometry of things?
So I designed the architecture of things. So
Hmm.
yeah, like you said, like cracks and things, those small things, those are not our. I think that's mostly paint, scenic painting, or
Hmm.
maybe even model shop, depending on what exactly it is. Um, so what we provide is just like, I mean, you can think of it as like just like walls and like the space. We add like sometimes if it's necessary, like the particular items, but usually not. I mean, if it's like a couch or something, we just put like a placeholder, and
Ah.
then the model shop builds it. Prop designer can come into play in that case. But if there is like an architectural detail like molding and that kind of stuff, we do include in the drafts.
So okay, so you finish, say we're designing an interior room and you finish the
Hmm.
walls and the layout and you've got the placeholders for the couch and the tables and things.
Hmm.
At what point, you know, is it finished and you hand it off? And like, what does that look like? Do you hand off like the I don't know, visual representation as blueprints to
Yeah,
somebody else
blueprints.
and they create it? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then set shop builds it. Prop department builds the props, and model shop builds the props and other things, and then the scenic painting paints it based on the concept art and production designer's vision.
Yeah.
What we deliver is mostly black and white. I mean, there we can include like kind of the artwork at some point, so
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a reference, but that's not kind of
How big
our
is there a
focus.
difference of designing things for 3D printing versus something that's going to be sculpted? Like if you're designing an outside landscape, I'm assuming, you know, the topography and the geography or whatever is going to be maybe molded with wire and some kind of, I don't know, clay or paper mache or something versus like a house which might be 3D printed. Like, is there a huge difference in how you design these things?
Yeah, it is actually. So it's also it's more about like, is there gonna be animation on it? Is a question. Like
Hmm.
if there's like a hill, um, like like mountainous thing, and there's no animation on it, it can be built out of foam or whatever, and that's gonna be landscape department's job. They're gonna have some sort of visual reference to work with, some sort of overall dimensions. It doesn't have to be really detailed, and they can kind of make that happen. But if there's animation on it, then it gets more tricky because then it needs to be made out of wood. Um, so it needs to have some sort of structure that's like precisely defined
Wow.
measurement wise, that so that set shop can build it, and then there can be like tie downs. The puppets can be attached to that set. And then in terms of 3D printing, it's more for, I guess, prop kind of stuff. I mean, sometimes some architectural details can be 3D printed too, but it's just like kind of part of the 3D model. Like I deliver what I already modeled in the software. Like I export it in a format that is compatible for the 3D printer, and they just kind of print it out.
Is there any, so once you hand off the blueprint, so is there much follow-up? Like, do you go to the sets and the set designers, or you're the set designer, sorry, the fabricators and whatnot, and be like, no, this is not what we wanted, or whatnot? Like, are you involved in that process as well?
No, once I hand it off, it's kind of done because those decisions are made throughout the process already. And what I deliver is just like all the dimensions, all the details that they can work with. I mean, if they have questions, they can come back and ask, like, but it's at that point, like when I deliver it, from then on, I move on to the next set.
Okay. Maybe my last like technical question about this. Okay, so you're working on a big production right now. And you seem like you're kind of at the front, more at the front of the pipeline. Does this mean that your job will finish much further in advance than animation and everything production actually continues afterwards? Or are you here to the end of production typically?
Yeah, good question. Usually I come in kind of earlier in the process. I mean, so I finished the blueprints, design part is done, I deliver it, and then they build it, and then when it's built, animation starts animating while I'm working on another set. So there's a kind of a overlap, I guess. And then when the last set is done, I guess then my job will be done.
Yeah.
And then then the animation, usually animators work longer, and then the editing. I think the editing is the luckiest in terms of job security, because they come in the earliest and then they leave at the very end. But yeah, we are kind of somewhere in between, like, yeah.
Interesting. So you've also done live action, and you mentioned that as well. Is the process largely different for live action in this case?
There are some similarities and differences. Like I said, that animator access thing doesn't exist for live action,
right.
Obviously. And then, well, for live action, there's like, you always have the option to have a location, right? Like that kind of changes things. But in stop motion, everything has to be like built from scratch, which means everything needs to be designed. And other than that, like in terms of the way we draft is kind of similar. I mean,
so you still get out your foam core and build.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And then are you actually like taking a camera and like looking through the lens to see how everything,
there's within the software, you can place cameras and kind of match the storyboard frames, which we call it scouting. Again, that's something we do. Once we design the set, we have like we make camera scouts in the software so that we can see if it matches with the frame. And then with the maquette, it's more like the actual maquette goes to the camera department, and they do their own scouting.
Do you ever get jealous of the fabricators? Because I know that you fabricate as well.
Yeah, I fabricated, but I love it. I enjoy it, but it is tough. I mean, I don't know if I want, because it also comes with like, it has like a physical burden to it. So like, I remember like having, some pain in my hands, a carpal tunnel, and also like I really I really admire that they're able to like replicate things in a way that I'm very jealous of, like the paint department. I don't know how they make like the copy of the same exact exact thing. But yeah, it's all really valuable.
Yeah, I'm wondering, you mentioned job stability. Are you once you wrap up on like a project like this, are you jumping on to live action back and forth from stop motion to live action, or do you kind of, is there enough work within stop motion to stay in stop motion, or do you also, you know, take on other types of roles?
Yeah. So far, so after Pinocchio, I had a year off, and during that year, I went back to Turkey, stayed there, worked on my own kind of short project. I was kind of considering at the time maybe I should start teaching or something, but then I got the job at Laika and I came back.
Nice.
And I don't know what will happen if I will roll off from, like, if I roll off from this project, and what will be the next step. I'll probably work on my own stuff again. um I'm not really interested in going back to live action.
When you say work on your own stuff, are you talking about your own short film or your own?
Yeah, short films. I also wanna, like, I have some ideas for, I at some point I wanna create a TV show. And I mean, by create I mean like write and kind of
Yeah,
find the ways to produce it, I
yeah.
guess.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so well, I want to hear more about how you went from Turkey to set designing in the US, because that's a huge jump that I don't think a lot of people make, and I think it's super awesome. So, okay, so maybe just start, because also I know you have an architecture
Yeah.
degree first. So maybe just start with when you were younger and you were thinking of what you wanted to do with a career, you know, what was your aspiration and what compelled you to get into architecture in Turkey?
Yeah, I always had I remember, like, this is, I don't know, maybe not related, but I remember like making like little houses for like bugs out of matchboxes, and like I would like dig a hole in the wall for like ants or something. Like, I was always like kind
Your
of
mom's
into.
like, "What are you doing? There's ants in our kitchen." You're like, "They live here. It's their house."
Yeah, I was always like interested in that kind of stuff. That probably played a part, but yeah, I was looking. I remember like drawing stuff. Like, I was always interested in visual, uh, like creative work. And after high school, like, I was thinking what I'll do in college, and I just, all my applications were interior design, architecture, environmental design. They were all design related, and I got into a university in my hometown Ankara called Hacettepe, an interior architecture uh, department. During that time, like when I was studying there, I also worked part time at a model shop, architecture model shop. That was kind of almost a coincidence. So I remember, so I was talking to my dad that I'm struggling with the models, like making models for my school projects, and he happened to have a friend whose mother was living in this building, that an architecture model shop existed. So they just went, I guess. They introduced me, and I was supposed to just kind of like shadow, I guess. I was supposed to be just there for the summer to learn things, but I actually started making things, and they hired me. So I would just work there on like holidays, and I was supposed to graduate in 4 years, but I ended up graduating in 6 years. So my last 2 years, I had a lot of free time. So I would just go there and work. So that was kind of the the part where like architecture and model making, I guess, developed. But then when I actually started working, I couldn't really find the creative side of the job that I was hoping for. I worked at some furniture companies in my hometown, which was far from being creative. And I did some like interior design work also, but again, like it just didn't satisfy me. And around that time, Paranorman came out. I think it was 2012. Anyway, I watched the film and I loved it.
Yeah.
That's still my favorite Laika movie ever. And I remember watching some behind the scenes videos on YouTube. And I saw this one particular video where they were making a lamp, like a library lamp kind of thing, like a desk lamp. The whole video is like this meticulous process of like, blowing little glass and like just the wires and like these tiny little parts coming together. And at the end, they show the scene where the lamps are, and there are like a lot of lamps. It's like a whole set with like so many things. And when I saw that, I was like, that's what I want to do.
Wow.
Because I had the model making experience and architecture, and I felt like it's just the perfect match for me. And I started searching like how can I, how can I be a set designer for stop motion, which is like doesn't even exist. It's not a thing like that you can, I guess, um, go to school for. Um, anyway, then I started searching like set design and programs that are offered, and I ended up finding this theater program at California State University, and I applied and I got in. So then I moved to California,
Wow.
and so again it was so I was in theater now, but I didn't really. It's actually kind of funny when I was first applying. I remember I had this interview with my um, who was going to be my professor. And he asked me like, why do you want to come here? And I told him that I want to design sets for stop motion animation. And he was like, what? That's not how it works. And I eventually got into school, and when I graduated, and we became like really close. Like he was like my mentor. Like he was this like kind of older Russian like stage designer, and we became like friends. And when I graduated, and not when I graduated, sorry, when I got the Pinocchio job, I actually had a dinner with him, and I was like, do you remember that you told me that's not how it works? He was like, yeah, I remember.
That's crazy.
But it took
What
some.
gave you the confidence to still go to this school when it wasn't exactly what you wanted to do, and the main professor that you would be having said this is not how you do it? Like, and then I think it's absolutely phenomenal that you saw Paranorman and you're like, I want to do that, and now here you are, literally
Yeah,
working on the next
isn't
Laika
that
movie.
isn't
It's
that funny?
absolutely incredible, especially because you were in Turkey at that point, and like,
Yeah.
how many people in the United States and Canada and North America, whatever, actually want to get in and they don't, like, and
Mhm.
you're like halfway around the world. I think that's incredible. So sorry, where did the confidence come from to be like, I want to make something like Paranorman, I'm going to apply to this school in California that isn't really into stop motion, and the professor's like, we don't do that here? What compelled you to still go there?
Uh, well, part of it is like I, I mean, I don't. I guess I don't see things as like. Um, I don't even know how to explain this, but it's kind of it's about like mindset thing. Like it wasn't like I knew that there's no school that teaches set design for stop
Hmm.
motion animation. So him saying that it's not the way it's supposed to be, it didn't really matter for me. Like for me, what mattered was just first like moving here, which was a grad school was kind of one of the best options to do that, because like if you move to the US with a tourist visa, you cannot work, or there are all these like hoops. Um, and I was talking to other people who did the move, and I was like asking their opinions, and everybody seemed to agree that like going to school is the best way to kind of immigrate, I guess. So once I found this program that was somewhat, I felt like related, um, which actually kind of was. I mean, honestly, all the other set designers come from theater background, so I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, at that time, my focus was just kind of let's just move there and learn what I'm gonna learn, and then see what happens. And I didn't even know I would actually end up doing what I'm doing now. I actually, if you told me back then, you know what, now you're gonna move there and then you're gonna end up like 10 years from now, fast forward, you're gonna do that, I would be like, I wouldn't even believe you probably. So it wasn't confidence, it was just like, you know what, let's do something
Yeah.
different.
Well,
So
I feel
yeah,
so proud of you. This is
thank
just
you.
amazing. But yeah, that makes sense. If you already knew there wasn't any school that taught it, and your goal was to come over and learn something in the related industry, then that makes a lot of sense. And that would give you the confidence to be like, Professor, I know, don't worry.
I know exactly what I'm doing. No.
So and plus, you know, like what you said, a lot of theater people move into stop motion. That makes sense because the software you said is the same. Yeah. The process is very similar, even if it's different. So, and there, like you said, there is no school, which, you know, you were thinking of teaching. Maybe there is a demand for people who want to learn set designing for stop motion, and there really isn't any formal program right now. So that could be a good opportunity. So, okay, so you graduate from California State, and you have your it's a what is it called?
You mean
the program, the degree?
Oh,
Masters
it's theater set design.
Theater and so you so you graduated with theater and set design. Now what?
So initially the visa type that I had was like a student visa. It was giving me an option to stay for a year and work. And I started looking for jobs. And I ended up when I was in school, I had this internship at a model shop in Torrance. And again, I was doing like architecture models and stuff. So I think I worked there for a little bit, and then I found a job at an architectural design company because they had their own little model shop within the company. The company was called Jordi. They were in downtown LA. So they hired me, and I was kind of this joker employee, because whenever their design teams needed help with some drafting, I would just kind of jump into that. And then whenever that need wasn't there, I was going back to the model shop and working on models. But again, again, like I was doing not what I wanted to do. I looked for some stop motion work back then. I remember, I mean, there are some studios in LA. They do more like, I guess, short form content, and more like they hired on like project basis. And I remember applying and talking to some of them, and at the time they weren't looking for anyone, and I didn't have any stop motion experience. So nothing happened. But then I realized that how can I get stop motion experience? Like, because like if they're not gonna hire me, like I'm never gonna be able to have that experience.
Exactly.
So I decided to make my own short film. It was at the time it was more of like a portfolio thing for me. So I didn't even have an idea like what to do. I was just thinking, oh, maybe I should just do a day in the life, like a character just wakes up and like, I don't know, goes to sleep. Because I was like, literally, I had zero ideas to what to do. I just want to showcase my like model making skills, and like, I guess, just have something on my portfolio. But then the more I thought about it, like it kind of grew on me. I saw this thing on the news about a father, a guy who owned a flower, like he was selling flowers in Syria, and then the war started, and he dies. Like it was like a really sad news story. And when I watched that, I started crying, and I felt like, oh, that's maybe I should make a short film about that, something like that. And then I filmed my first short. Was called Mother of All Flowers.
Yeah.
It was this mother and daughter. They were like, I didn't specify that it was Syria, but they were basically in a Middle Eastern country, and they were affected by the war. So when I had that, when I finished that, I started sending it to festivals, and now I had some experience in stop motion, which was actually really useful because that was the first time I actually animated something. So I was kind of a little bit, I guess, self-conscious. But at the same time, I learned a lot, like throughout the process, because every time I was just like, I needed to, shoot something, and I would just, YouTube, Google, like how do I do this? Like I had this scene, I remember, there was supposed to be like rain, and it's obviously not water. I didn't know what it should be. There were all these like little things that I learned when I was doing that.
Wow. So okay, so you you were model making, but you wanted to get into stop motion still. You had your degree, you're in the US, you have a very stressful year to figure things out.
Yep.
Were you very stressed?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah. And now you have the short film that's you know, playing in festivals. At what point did you end up working on like Pinocchio, which is
Yeah.
incredible? How did
So
that happen?
here's what happened.
Here's what happened.
I'll tell you the story. It's actually an interesting story. So I was working at an architecture real design company, and like I said, this whole working thing is for a year, right? So I needed to have a plan if I want to stay. My company decided to apply for a work visa for me, which is called H-1B. And sorry, I'm getting like maybe too many details of this stuff, but it's kind of important to the story because the way it's allocated is like usually every year, I don't know, 200,000 people apply like through their companies, and I think 85,000 is selected through like a draw. So it's kind of like a lottery, but you have, I guess, more chances. And if you have a graduate degree, then you can enter the draw one more time. So at the time I calculated, I had 60% chances of getting it. So they applied, I think it was around, you know, like towards the end of my permit was ending. Meanwhile, by the way, I don't remember the timeline, but so I watched Isle of Dogs, and I was looking at reading the credits, the names on the credits. I think this was around the time that they were applying for the visa or whatever. So I saw a Turkish name in the credits, Özlem Aktürk, and she was in the camera department. So my plan B at the time was moving to UK if this visa thing doesn't work out. And you know, Isle of Dogs was filmed there, so I was like, oh, there's this Turkish person who worked on it, maybe she can give me some advice. So I googled her name, I found her email address, and I sent her an email. I asked, like, you know, I'm planning to move to UK. If that happens, like, what's your advice? Where should I look for stop motion work? And then she responded to me. She said, like, oh, you know, if you're in the US, why are you even coming here? Because they're gonna make this like really cool Pinocchio movie there. You should like look into it. And I was like, huh. And I started like Googling, and there was nothing about it online. Like all the articles said like Guillermo del Toro had this like vision, but it's not happening for years. And I was like, why did she even tell me that? And then a week later, it was all over the news. Netflix picked it up. It's happening. And I checked its IMDb, and I saw like I was literally, so I opened the IMDb page, cast and crew, and I just started Googling everybody more or less. I found the email address of the production designer, and I sent him my portfolio. He didn't respond right away, and I was like, yeah, of course, you know, why would he respond or whatever. So I kind of forgot about it. And then fast forward a couple months later, I received an email from him. He said like he liked my portfolio, and he sent me a link and told me to apply from that specific link. And I applied again a couple months later. So then when my company applied for that permit, around the same time, I got an email from Pinocchio that out of, I think it was like the email mentioned that like 25,000 people applied, and they were contacting like 25 people at this point. I think they reduced it to
25,000 people.
Yeah, I think word got out somehow. I don't know how they applied, but because
it's your
for me it
contact
was
in
like
UK just telling everybody.
yeah. And
wow. Oh my
anyway,
gosh.
Then you know, a couple of weeks later we did a video interview, like a Zoom call, and then I got the job.
So did they ask about your visa at all?
Yeah, like, so that was the point. At that point I'm like, you know, I don't know what to do. Like my company's applying for this thing. And the funny thing is, so I didn't get that visa.
Oh no.
I had 60% chances, and
wow. You didn't get drawn.
Yeah, my name just wasn't drawn.
Pinocchio got a visa for you, I guess.
Yeah, so they
Wow,
applied
that's
for a different
incredible.
kind of. There's like an artist visa, like this visa for like I don't know, extraordinary talent.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, they
Sorry.
no, they must have really, really liked you because, as far as I understand, U.S. companies don't particularly, unless they're like Disney or whatnot, don't particularly like going through the
Yeah,
process of giving out visas
yeah,
because it's like it's long and it's costly and there's
yeah.
lawyers involved and et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's incredible. What do you? Okay, so 25,000 people applied, not just for your job, but what do you think made your portfolio stand out to Pinocchio?
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like maybe that having that short film in there might have helped. And I had this like architecture model making background.
Yeah.
Something must have. So I
Because I'm
honestly I should
wondering,
have
because
probably asked
Pinocchio,
that.
at least from what I've seen so far, like, the sets are gritty, they're
Mm-hmm.
very organic, everything's old, styled, like medieval kind of. Whereas like the sets that you worked, or the models that you've worked on have been like, modern, more modern buildings, and even your short film, like, etc. So,
No, actually, yeah, the architecture stuff was like that, but my short film, it was kind of like I had kind of lots of texturing, and my theater set models were usually heavily textured. Like I liked using
amazing.
different textures and paint styles and stuff. So maybe that might have helped, but yeah, I
What
don't
a
exactly know.
like, I think it's amazing that you got Pinocchio, but also you put in a lot of hard work, just like internet sleuthing and finding people to talk to and putting yourself out there. Like even just going through the credits and finding one Turkish name, and coincidentally, this person led you to a path that ended up, sparking a stop motion career for you, which I think is incredible. How was working
Yeah,
on Pinocchio?
uh, it was it was
I know it's
amazing.
not
I
out
mean,
yet, so you can't say much, but like, how was the experience?
yeah, it was. It was like I don't know, like the best thing ever. I don't
Yeah,
know, because
yeah.
it was like a dream come true for me, and the whole time I couldn't believe like I'm working on a Guillermo del
Wow.
Toro film. Like I'm still a big fan of his work, and the story really, it's amazing. I mean, like you said, I cannot really talk about it, but it's like it's special, and I was really excited to be there the whole time.
Of course.
um and I was I mean, I was sad that the world had to go through what it had to go through, but I was kind of happy that because it extended my work situation, because I was supposed to be there for a couple of months, and then I ended up just staying for a year and a half,
Wow. Oh
um,
my gosh.
because of the pandemic. And yeah, it's just it was, I mean, part of it was I was excited the whole time, which I'm still like. I love my job, and I'm just really happy to be doing what I'm doing. But also on the other hand, I had this like constant uh what's it called, like a, there's a word for it. Okay, like I was panicking that like imposter syndrome. Yeah, I had
Ah,
the imposter syndrome thing going on the other hand, because I'm like, this is my first experience. It's such a big like movie that everybody's excited about. Like, what if I like mess something up? Like, I ruin everything. There's that fear on the background. But luckily, like the art director, production designer, like everybody was like super supportive. And just I don't know, this like stop motion community is like special. I feel like everybody is really
totally.
kind and helpful. So like, I don't know, it went well, I think. I hope.
I think that's so amazing. I'm so happy for you. And that, that excitement and also kind of fear is such
Mhm.
a kind of like special and rare feeling to get in the working world. So I think that's incredible. And then so you were there for a year and a half. Did you expect to go to Laika afterwards?
No,
Or
again, a story is coming. So I was
yeah, tell
living
me.
in I was living in Portland, and when we start working from home, we were having all these like Zoom meetings. And by the way, like when I was working on Pinocchio, I'm talking with my colleagues, and we had this like ongoing conversation about where people live, like, where do you live, which part of town you live. And whenever I tried to explain where I live, they were like, we had a friend, his name is Carl, and he used to live in that area. I wonder if it's close to where you're living. So one day when we had a Zoom call with the other designers, and they asked, when we were talking, there was like a church nearby, and the church bells, they heard the church bells, and they were like, oh, there was a church near where Carl lived. This Carl name keep coming up. And then one day I was just coming back home from like grocery store, and so my apartment was on the third floor. I don't know, I guess I was like tired. I arrived to the second floor, and I saw like a box in front of the door. I was like, I got a package, I guess. And I look at the package, it says Carl.
Oh no.
And I'm like, Carl lives here. And I realized that, I'm supposed to go one more level, but I realized that he was like literally my downstairs neighbor.
You have his address now.
So I wrote him a note. I said, like, I'm a set designer on Pinocchio, and I keep hearing your name. We should hang out. And we
You just left it on his door or on the package?
Yeah, on the package. I like made a little note, and then he reached out back because I think I wrote my number or email or something. And we had a coffee, and we walked like around the neighborhood. He was at the time working at Laika as a set designer, and we just chatted and we became friends. And anyway, when my contract ended with Pinocchio, I had to leave the country because you have like 60 days to either figure out what you're gonna do next, or you have to leave. And at the time I was kind of like, anyway, I decided to leave. I went back to Turkey, and I stayed for a year. Then, well, I don't know how much. Okay, I'll just kind of quickly say that it was kind of a personal, I guess, dealings I had to deal with. I went through a divorce. Anyway, when that happened, I was like, and kind of one of the reasons I ended up having to turn back was because my ex-partner wasn't able to work with the visa type that he had, and it was a whole thing. So when I got the divorce, I was like, okay, now I don't have a reason to turn back anymore. And all the stop motion work is still happening in the US. I should probably find a way to go back. Anyway, then I applied for a couple of things. I remember, but nothing. I didn't get anything back. Like you said, like the whole visa thing is kind of complicated for companies too. So I understand. And usually, like the film projects, they're just like they happen like fast, and they have to kind of fill those positions. They don't really have time to wait for visas most of the times. And anyway, like I said, I was looking for some teaching jobs, and what else can I do if nothing happens? But then I think it was like Christmas or something. I sent a message to Carl, and I was like, hey, what's up? Merry Christmas or whatever. And I told him that I was looking for, and we started talking, and I told him that I was looking for work, and he said I can send him my resume, and he can kind of give it to the right people. Because I applied, I think online they had a job opening for set dresser position back then, and that didn't work out, I think. So anyway, they received my resume and portfolio through him, and they reached out, and we had an interview, and I got the job. I moved back. Unfortunately, we couldn't work with Carl because before I started, he left the job. So I actually kind of took his computer position. It's kind of a weird situation. I'm really thankful that he helped, but it was like kind of this whole part of it is coincidence, but part of it is also like kind of, I guess, reaching out and like kind of staying in touch.
What an incredible story. I mean, just listening, it sounds exhausting, actually. You're in Turkey, you go to school in US, you get a job, you're stressed out about where you're going to work. You finally get on Pinocchio, then you come back to Turkey, then you're looking again. Now you're back in the US. Like
that's the thing. Like the thing is, after that Pinocchio project, I was like so pumped and like so like now I know what I'm doing. Now I want to keep doing this, and then turning back to Turkey.
Going. So this now you like you said, you know what you want to do. That's amazing. That's amazing. So I guess like you're trying to stay in the US at this point, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So once Laika wraps up, you're going to be, because you're still on a visa, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'll just keep applying for visas until whatever point I
Well,
get
now
to
you
do
have
it.
massive experience working on. Have you ever talked to the model shop back in Turkey and been like, hey, guess what? I'm working on the two biggest stop motion productions in the world right now.
I don't think they know what a stop motion is, though.
Oh no.
Because was that like this old guy who was an architect. He owned the model shop, and I think there was one other person where he was like super small, and I don't think they know. Even if I explain them, I don't think they will understand.
You have to show them the movies. I think that's
Yeah.
incredible, though. You know, your journey is filled with coincidences, but also at every point you were putting yourself out there, even from the start when you said to your dad, like, hey, I need help building these models, and you really wanted to, and he helped you out. I think that's incredible. It's, you know, as looking back on your journey, how do you feel now that you're working at the biggest stop motion production in the world right now?
Yeah, I mean it's true. Like the coins, what was there was like a saying about this, like luck is opportunity meets preparedness, I think.
Yeah.
So basically, coincidence is a part of it, but I think the biggest part of it is just like, reaching out and just keep doing, like keep improving your work and just showing it to people and just telling the world, I want to do this, right? Telling people
Yeah.
that I want to do this, and somebody's gonna like either help you or show you the way, or just like, or they will ignore it, that's fine too. Like you literally have nothing to lose, and that's kind of the way it works for most people, I believe, because it's not like, I mean, you cannot like go on Indeed and like search set design jobs for stop motion. Like it's mostly word of mouth, and same thing goes for film. Like it's all like kind of network and like just
Yeah. You have to start to know people to
yeah.
find out about the work. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a ton of sense. I used to, before I was in stop motion animation at all, I was in my business job just being like, when is somebody gonna discover me? It
Yeah.
doesn't happen. It doesn't
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
You have to put yourself in those situations and talk
Yeah.
to those people and reach out, and then you start hearing about things and whatnot. So,
Hmm.
and also you had the confidence to know exactly what you wanted to do. Do you still have imposter syndrome now that you're working again on another movie production?
At the beginning, I had, so I started back in March. I think like first, I mean, up until maybe a month ago, um, I
Wow.
was like kind of having. I mean, it's the same thing but different.
Yeah.
Laika has more, I guess, digital part to it that I wasn't familiar with.
Hmm.
So I was a little bit like, oh, because I'd done everything in practical shape or form, and so I had a little bit of like fear, but I think I started adapting to it at this point, and it's going well now.
So was there a turning point in your mind where you didn't feel the imposter syndrome anymore? And like what caused that? Was it just familiarity and experience?
I think it's just, yeah, familiarity and experience. I don't remember like a moment of like kind of switching. It can switch on any moment.
Yeah, right.
Kind of, yeah. Like I mean, whenever, like you said, like when you put yourself out there and you're doing something new, you're always gonna have, I guess, some sort of fear.
Yeah, of
Even like a new job, new place,
course.
new field. Yeah, anything can kind of, I guess, trigger that.
So, you know, we've chatted about what a set designer does, the whole process, your journey specifically. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that you think people might be interested in hearing?
Um, I'm not sure. I can't think of anything. I mean, I'm kind of,
That's fine. I picked your brain a lot already. Yeah.
yeah, I kind of enjoy animating too, but I feel like I should like kind of put more time into learning it. I mean, it was like my animating thing was more, like I said, just to have something on my portfolio. But then when I actually did it, I liked it because
Yeah.
it's like such a magical thing to like
Of
just.
course. And it almost spans from, you know, like your childhood love of making little
Mhm.
houses and things for just bugs.
Mhm.
Like it feels like this was maybe in you all this time.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, thank you. You know, if there's nothing else, any advice or anything you wanted to share, then that's really cool. So thank you so much, Merve, for coming on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting.
Of course, you know,
Awesome.
I find your work super interesting, and you've enlightened me a lot on the process on what set designing does. So I think that's really cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And if you're listening and you want to get in touch with Merve or reach out to her and follow her, you can do so by checking her out on Instagram, which is Merve.Çaydere.
Yep.
Is that right?
Right.
And her website is the same, merveçaydere.com. And I'll include both those links in the description of this chat. And thank you so much for listening. And that's all for now. Okay, bye. The music for this podcast was composed by Will Farmer and the graphics by Daniel Abensauer. I encourage you to look them up if you enjoyed their work.